be more specific about our current system and how it doesn't protect privacy?
If we take a look at the systems that we are interacting with every single day, what those tools and applications, those social media networks, basically everything that we do in our digital lives, and all of our lives have basically shifted from physical reality to this digital world.
Yes.
So everything we basically do, everything we do in this room, everything we do when we are out on the street, because all of the technology has become part of physical reality, has been consumed sort of. And so all of this has been built on top of what the former Harvard professor Shoshana Zuboff has called surveillance capitalism, right? And I think that really lies at the core. And it's relatively straightforward to understand what those companies are doing. If you ask yourself, hey, why is this application that I'm using actually free, right? Why is nobody charging me to ask this super intelligent chatbot questions every day? Why are they building data sensors for trillions of dollars while I don't have to pay anything for it, right? So that's the question that you need to ask yourself, right? And what you end up realizing is that all of those systems are basically built as rent extraction mechanisms, where from you as a user, you're not really a user, you're sort of a subject of those platforms. You are being used to extract value from you without you noticing. And they're able to extract value from you because all of your behavior, all of your interactions with those systems are being taken, and they perform mass surveillance, bulk surveillance, and it's those companies, right? We're just talking about companies. We're not even talking about intelligence or governments or anything.
Yes.
We're just talking about those companies that exist within our economy. And so they record everything they can, because every single bit of information that I can take from your behavior allows me to predict your behavior. And where I can predict your behavior, I can utilize that to, in the most simple case, do something like serving you ads, right?
It's on you to protect yourself. That's why we trust and personally use Aura, today's sponsor. Aura does all the heavy lifting to keep you safe online. They take action against these data brokers and companies who are selling your personal information. Going after them directly, you don't have to lift a finger. Aura handles it. But that's not all. Here's where it gets even more serious. Aura doesn't just stop there. They continuously monitor the dark web for any trace of your personal data. If they find your information floating around in places it shouldn't be, Aura will alert you immediately. They'll let you know fast if anyone is trying to use that data to access your credit accounts or even drain bank accounts. And if the worst happens to you, Aura has you covered. They offer up to $5 million in identity theft insurance to help you recover if someone gets a hold of your information and tries to do real damage. Don't wait until it's too late. Head over to our link, aura.com/anonymous, to try Aura free for 14 days. That's plenty of time for Aura to find out if any of your personal data is exposed and start protecting you from these threats.
But in more complex cases, I can do things like I can steer your behavior. I can literally control you. I can turn you into a puppet that does whatever I want. And so those are the systems that we are faced with right now. And the internet has sort of been this amazing emancipator for humanity, yes. Right? This show is only possible because of the internet. Otherwise, with traditional media, we wouldn't be able to speak about those topics, I feel like.
That's right.
But at the same time, sort of nowadays, it has transformed into one of the biggest threats to human civilization.
At the user level, at my level, the level of the iPhone owner, is it possible to communicate privately with assurance of privacy with another person?
That's an interesting question. So we start with this concept of insecure communication channels.
Yes.
And since every communication channel is insecure, what we employ is end-to-end encryption. And end-to-end encryption allows us to take this information, take a message, and lock it securely so that only Tucker and Yannick are able to unlock them and see what's going on. And that is a fact. So there have been many cases where big players with big interests, I guess, have attempted to undermine cryptography, have attempted to get rid of end-to-end encryption, to install backdoors. There has been what is commonly called the crypto wars in the 1990s, right, where the cypherpunks fought for the right to publish open source encryption and cryptography, and many more cases, I guess. But at the end of the day, I would say that as a realistic assessment, this kind of cryptography is secure and it works. Now, that unfortunately is not the whole answer, because what we have to think about is, now what happens with those end devices, right?
Fair.
I mean, the messenger, right, that is being sent from Yannick to Tucker might be secure, but now if I cannot undermine and apply force to this message to understand what's inside, well, I'm just going to apply force to your phone. And that's sort of what's happening. So when we look at different applications, for sure there is a whole variety of applications, messaging applications, right, that do not employ encryption and security standards and might collect all of your messages and images and utilize them for those machines, right, that extract as much value as possible from you. But there's applications like Signal that don't do that are actual open source cryptography technology that anyone can verify themselves and take this code and turn it into an actual application, install it on your phone. All of those things are possible, right? So that's not the issue. The underlying issue really is that you have this device in your hand that is sort of closed hardware. You don't know how that thing works, right? It is impossible to understand how that thing works. It is impossible to understand how the operating system on that thing works. And there's flaws in those systems, right? Those are closed systems. There's flaws in those systems for some reason because people don't always have the best interests of others in mind, but also
not always,
but also because people make mistakes, right? Honest mistakes that are non-malicious. And so I think that in general also speaks for the importance for free accessible hardware where people with technical skills can play around with and find issues. But at its core, what you're being subjected to right now, I would say, is tactical surveillance. And what it means is that there's some actor, can be some state actor, can be someone else, that decides that Tucker Carlson is worth to be surveilled.
I think that has been decided, yeah.
You think so?
Yeah, I do, yeah. I'm getting that sense.
Yeah. So tactical surveillance, that means that you specifically are being targeted. And that is in contrast to strategic surveillance, which is this idea of everyone is being surveilled. Let's just surveil everyone, collect every single bit of information, and store that for the entirety of human history, and then someday maybe we'll be able to use that, right? So those are those two concepts. And what we've seen over the last few years is sort of a shift away from tactical surveillance towards strategic surveillance. And surveillance capitalism has really helped this concept because there's so much data that is being logged, that can be stored. There's so many new devices and applications that can be employed. And so we see pushes like, for example, chat control within the European Union that is sort of a backdoor to implement backdoors within all of the messenger applications to be able to scan your applications, to scan your messages, to take your messages somewhere else and decide whether or not those people like what you're saying within your private messages. So I would say in general, as a normal human being, with your iPhone, you are still able to privately communicate. That is still something that exists. However, this ability has greatly been limited if there is someone who wants to see your message. I would say they can, unfortunately.
How difficult is it for a determined, say, state actor, an intel agency, to say, I want to read this man's communications, listen to his calls, watch his videos, read his texts? How hard is it for them to do that?
So I think that, and we can look at different court cases that have publicly emerged in regards to Apple, for example, right? Where Apple has refused intelligence to give them backdoor access to their devices. And what's so important about this discussion that we are having here is that every time you're building a system where you add backdoor access so that someone in the future can decide to get access and take a look at what you're writing, right? What that invites is for everyone to do that, because a backdoor inherently is a security flaw in our system. And it's not just some specific intelligence agency that decides to read your messages, right? It's every intelligence agency on Earth at that point, right? And so that's why as a nation, you cannot weaken security by getting rid of privacy without weakening your entire economy, cybersecurity, and also social fabric at the end of the day, right? And the whole strategic positioning of you as a nation. How difficult it is, I would say also from a practical operational security standpoint, depends on what are you doing with your phone, right? Is your phone this strict device that is only used for messaging, or is your phone also using different types of media? Are you sending images? Are you receiving messages? So I think 2 years ago there was this case where there was a 0-day backdoor being used across Apple devices, because when I sent you an image and your messenger had auto download on, I could get full access to your phone by sending you a message. And you're not my contact even, probably, right? I just figure out what your phone number is. I send you an image. The image gets automatically downloaded. Some malicious code that I have injected gets executed. And now I own your phone and I can do whatever I want. And then end-to-end encryption doesn't help you, right? Because I have literal access to the end device that decrypts this information. And so that's very dangerous. That has been fixed. But I think what it highlights really is that complexity is the issue here. So complexity in the kinds of applications that you're running, complexity in the underlying operating system that this device has, all of that complexity invites mistakes and also malicious security flaws to be installed in those systems.
People who have adversaries are being surveilled, right?
Yes, I think so. I would say that tactical surveillance really is something that exists. I would say in this battle for privacy, it is actually not the most important thing to focus on, right? Huh. Because this kind of tactical surveillance I feel like to a certain degree we need to accept, unfortunately, right? Not the tactical surveillance that says Tucker Carlson is a journalist. I don't like that. Let me surveil him, right? Yes. That's not the kind of tactical surveillance I'm speaking of. But if we have legal procedures and actual judiciary warrants in place, right? I feel like as a society we could accept that to combat
as long as we trusted our systems. So we could definitely accept that, of course.
But the fundamental issue really is, and that's sort of so ironic, right? That all of the surveillance sort of needs to operate under secrecy in order to function, right? You should not know that you're being surveilled. Nobody sort of has oversight. Not even the democratic processes are able to have oversight, because it's all wrapped in secrecy. So that really brings us to the fundamental issue here, also with strategic surveillance, surveilling everyone, just deciding, well, I'll take a look at everyone's phone, store everything, and maybe I don't like someone in the future, then I have this backlog of information. So the important question to consider here is thinking about, is there even a future where from a legal standpoint it is possible to implement procedures that guarantee that there is no secret surveillance in place?